Hello, friends, and welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies, a podcast that's listening to the songs of Disney movies past and present. I'm Josh Spiegel.
And I'm Scott Renshaw. Thanks for joining us on this comprehensive and encyclopedic compendium of all things Disney music. Now playing The Little Mermaid.
Before we get into our discussion, thank you for listening. No matter how you're checking us out, we hope you like what you're hearing. And if you are, we'd appreciate it if you could rate and review Mousterpiece Melodies on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever app you're using to listen.
That's right. Let everyone know how much you love the show and tell your friends to do the same. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw, and you can read my film criticism at cityweekly.net.
And you can follow me on Blue Sky at Mousterpiece and email me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com with any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share. And now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get into our discussion of the songs of The Little Mermaid. And as everybody I'm sure out there knows, we're talking about the 1989 film written and directed by John Musker and Ron Clements, featuring the voices of Jodie Benson, Samuel E. Wright, Pat Carroll, Christopher Daniel Barnes, Buddy Hackett, and more, and of course featuring songs written by Alan Menken and the late Howard Ashman. Now, Scott, I believe, I feel like you and I must have done a revisited title episode on this movie back on the old show.
Pretty
right?
sure. Sure.
So with that said, and obviously considering my amazing memory, as everybody can tell, why don't you refresh my memory and let our listeners have their memories refreshed as well. What was your initial experience with this movie? I mean, because here, let me phrase it a different way. When we talked about Dick Tracy in our last episode, I made the faulty assumption that you saw that film in the summer of 1990. This movie was released in the fall of 89. Did you see this in theaters?
I did see it in theaters, and so this would have been the year that I was in graduate school and was hanging out mostly at the co-op house where I had lived when I was an undergrad and was, sort of that was sort of my social hub. And so I had a friend. I was not seeing. There was not many movie opportunities in my life post that summer. I did see a fair amount of that summer of '89, but I had a friend who was far more of both a musical theater nut and a Disney nut than I have, and just she desperately wanted to go see it and didn't have anyone, and so I wasn't like, oh, I have to see the new Disney movie that's coming out. It's like, okay, sure, I'll see this thing, and it's like, oh well, this was charming, this was a delight. So I mean, that was sort of in a more of a, we've already talked about the Dick Tracy. There was sort of a fallow period where between school and just finances, I was not seeing nearly as many as I was, at the time in my high school year when I was working in a movie theater in the mid 80s and then later, obviously. But this was one of those things that I did make it a point of seeing. But again, primarily because someone else wanted to and not because I had to.
Interesting. So I mean, as I recall from our old show, our old discussion, you have spoken very highly about some of the songs in this film. So you mentioned here,
yes,
Your initial reaction was very charming, perhaps unexpectedly so. Did the music really stand out to you? And I guess you've mentioned before it not being a big show tune person maybe at the time. So did you have any sense of who Menken and Ashman were?
Well, yes, because I knew Little Shop. Certainly knew that. And so that was why it was a bit of a surprise, because if the primary way that Ashman and Menken is from Little Shop of Horrors, you don't think Disney. It's really interesting to think about how for so many of us that is sort of the touchstone for what they were as a composing team for music. But then they had this thing which is this weird musical about a man-eating plant, and so that's just a completely different vibe going on in that thing. So I was interested just because I knew Little Shop of Horrors, and yeah, this was a fun little twist on my expectations.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny. You of course you weren't seeing a ton of movies at the time because of your circumstances, whatever the details there are. I know my case was I wasn't seeing a lot of movies at the time either, but that's because I was 5. I was a little boy who wanted to be a big boy, as we all know. And I know I mentioned as much on the old show. I don't know if I had specified it in an earlier episode where I said that the first movie I remember seeing in theaters was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The second movie I remember seeing in theaters was this. And it was because, similar to how my recollection of Who Framed Roger Rabbit is of Judge Doom turning into a tune, not just any tune. At the end of that movie, my recollection of this movie when I was age 5 was seeing Ursula turn into this gigantic monster at the end of the movie. That's my recollection from age 5. I remember like crouching in my seat, delightedly terrified at what was happening on screen. The music did not immediately stand out to me at the time, but also it's one of those things where, like, over time, we both know it very well. We've talked about it on this show and the old show about how well Disney is able to self-mythologize. They're able to create a legacy around movies, but this was one that kind of came right out of the box. That, you know, and the music is such a core part of it. I might argue, because I'm a contrarian, that the Disney Renaissance may have turned into full swing with this movie, but I would argue it existed a little bit before. The beginnings of it are there in Oliver and Company and in The Great Mouse Detective. But this is the movie where everything really feels like it comes together, and in such a tight package. One thing I somehow often forget whenever I watch or rewatch this movie is it's very short, relatively speaking.
Same reaction.
This is, without credits, like 78 minutes long, and it includes 7 original songs, all of which written by Menken and Ashman. And the funny thing to me, I don't know that this is going to be a terribly hot take. Maybe you will disagree. I think this is a pretty cold take. 7 songs. 3 of them are, you know, they're fine. They're good. 4 of them are incredible. But 3 of them are just okay. And it's funny because, like, when we talked about Mary Poppins a few episodes ago, we obviously a film with lots and lots of songs. We talked about how the first couple of songs maybe ease you into the movie, but they don't automatically give you a good sense of what the movie is going to be or what the music is really going to be. And I think the argument could be made for the opening song here, which begins pretty much as soon as the studio logo vanishes. That song is called Fathoms Below, because the movie does not begin under the sea. It begins above the surface of the water as we follow a ship heading home to an unnamed kingdom. I don't even know if they established that it's in the Mediterranean, but that's basically the assumption that this movie takes place somewhere around the Mediterranean Sea. And this is how we meet the young man who will be the romantic source of all sorts of frustration in this movie, Prince Eric. And he is a raffish young man with his dog and his very put upon, what do we call it? It's not really his
manservant.
Manservant.
Sure.
You were going to say butler, perhaps, if I hadn't.
Sure.
That's Grimsby. I'm sorry. Wikipedia tells us that he is a steward, but that also seems like a nice way of calling him a manservant. And by the way, before we even get into Fathoms Below, do you know the fun fact about Grimsby, about the voice actor of Grimsby?
Entertain me.
Well, that actor who plays Grimsby is Ben Wright, who you may, if you're listening out there, you might not know. Do you know that Ben Wright voiced one of the lead characters in a Disney animated film that we have not talked about yet in the show, but we will?
I know I should know the name, but it's not jumping out at me.
Well, that's okay. I forgive you. He played Roger in 101 Dalmatians.
Okay.
And I believe the apocryphal story, I don't know if it's true, but I know I've heard this before, so if I've heard it, I must be able to share it online, is that when he was recording for this movie, he mentioned, oh, by the way, I was in a different Disney movie. I played Roger in 101 Dalmatians, and everybody was like, what, really? They did not realize who they had in their presence. He also voiced Rama, the panther in The Jungle Book. So I just think it's fun to note, this guy, he had been around before. He hadn't, as is the case here, he didn't actually sing in these films. He did not sing in Cruella de Vil, for example. But anyway, so after Prince Eric learns about the mythology of mermaids and mermen under the sea, that's kind of where we hear this first song, Fathoms Below. It's a solid sea shanty. I guess the only argument I'll make here, as much as I love the lyrics of Howard Ashman, I don't know that the lyrics are the strong suit here. I like the music very much. I think Alan Menken does a wonderful job of the kind of the underscore of the song. I don't know that the lyrics are anything special. What do you think about Fathoms Below?
Yeah, I mean, typically a song like this would do a little more table setting, a little more, it's it's in the Belle place. But I mean, Belle, of course, as we get, it serves its own weird purpose because it's both the I Want song and the table setting song. But so I think that you're right that there's a place where, in a lot of the other Disney, classics, Renaissance period and onward, this song would sort of be a little bit more about what is this world and what is the situation. As we talk about Encanto, we know it has one of those songs. It's just it's the setup song, and we don't really get that in the same way, and that's probably because the above the sea world is not really the world we're setting. And so it's weird. It's kind of in an awkward position where we start in the above the sea world, even though that's not really the essence of the story and the characters that we're going to be following for most of the time. So yeah, it's a nice tune, and seems like it's there and gone so quickly in its one verse that it doesn't really make an impression otherwise.
It's also interesting, as we'll talk about here, just thinking about it right now, of the 7 songs, 2 of them are sung by above ground characters or groups of characters in this case. And it's just really funny who the other character is who sings the above ground song. We'll get to that one soon. So after Fathoms Below, we get the opening titles. We get Alan Menken's wonderful score, obviously incorporating a lot of tunes that will play into the actual movie that we're watching. And after we get to kind of see all the different people of Atlantica. That's, again, what Wikipedia tells me is the name of this world, even though they don't say it in the script. After we see all these characters, they're there for a show. They're there for a concert, for a performance being led by the court composer Sebastian, who is also King Triton's, maybe not his manservant, but something kind of close to that in some ways, considering the tasks that Sebastian has to undertake throughout this film. And he then leads 6 of Triton's 7 daughters in a song called Daughters of Triton. And that's because, of course, the 7th daughter is Ariel and she is not there. That's how the song ends, by everybody, including Triton, realizing that the star attraction, the one mermaid whose voice is so lovely, more than anybody else as well, she just didn't figure out a way to show up. So we now kind of have 2 table setting songs in a way when you think about it, because this one obviously sets up not just that Ariel has this amazing voice, which is so critical to the story, but that she doesn't really have much interest in being like the other daughters of Triton. And this is a song that is, I think it's even shorter. Off the top of my head, I think it's even shorter than Fathoms Below. And it's, yes, by the way, it is. According to the track listing, it's 38 seconds. So, outside of me, every time I watch it now, I think, the one trivia question about Disney that I would probably be terrible at is name the other 6 sisters of Ariel's, because I know they all have A names, but I would not be able. Everybody does the whole name all 7 dwarfs. No, name all 7 daughters of Triton. I can't, and I bet neither can our listeners.
No, and we just watched it very recently. I mean, although, not like immediately, but still, no.
No. So, but I mean, what did you think of Daughters of Triton?
Is there anything more to say than what you said? It's 38 seconds of naming their names. And I mean, that's effectively it.
Yes.
Atina, Alana, Adela, Aquata, Arista, and Andrina.
I think you're looking at something online. That would be very impressive if
really?
You just read that.
Would you suspect that? Yes.
I would. Anyway, so yes, it's, again, 2 songs where they're both very short because this is a short movie, but also thinking like, I don't know that I would expect the next, 4 of the next 5 songs to be that good. And yet, so they are. And by the way, I put in my notes, I like how Triton's daughters are all named with an A, kind of like George Foreman naming all of his kids a version of George. Yes. And by the way, we talk about the curiosity of how, or at least I did, of which above ground characters talk. One of the interesting things in this movie, definitely different from some of the other Disney Renaissance musicals, is that 2 of the core comic relief characters don't sing. And that, of course, would lead me into talking about where Ariel is. Ariel is looking around at this shipwreck. She's ends up getting in a bit of a scuffle, kind of, with a shark because she's with her little friend Flounder, voiced by Jason Marin, who, again, this nice little kid who Also, it's funny. Jodie Benson doesn't sound like a 16-year-old when she voices Ariel, but Jason Marin, I don't know off the top of my head how old he was. He sounds young. And maybe that's part of the reason why Flounder doesn't sing, but he doesn't. After the two of them escape this shark, they then go up to the surface where they meet another of Ariel's friends, and that would be Scuttle the seagull, voiced by the aforementioned Buddy Hackett. And on the one hand, he, like Ariel, is fascinated by humans. He is fascinated by mankind, but the source of all of his humor is that he does not know a goddamn thing about humans, which is funny. It's always very, very funny, but that's his recurring bit. And I should note the whole comic relief character doesn't sing. Well, I'm going to bring that up again, specifically related to Scuttle and potentially related to the remake of this movie.
I was afraid of that, and yet I prepared accordingly.
I prepared accordingly as well, by which I mean I did not watch the remake again, because that would be, I made my mistake with our Aladdin episode back in the spring. I'm not rewatching it again. But anyway, my point is, so I do think it's interesting that neither Flounder nor Scuttle sing in this film, except for, in the latter case, a joke. After Ariel talks with Scuttle, learns about things like, I believe this is the scene where she learns about snarfblats and dinglehoppers, right? And, things like, let's see, if I recall correctly, snarfblats, the pipe.
The pipe.
Dinglehopper's the fork.
Is the
The fork. Yes. So,
which is a great setup for later.
Yes.
See, there's a great, it does create a great callback joke when she's at the dinner table and starts preening and primping with her fork and is embarrassed by everyone staring at her.
Well, and the pipe shows up again later as well, which is also a good callback. Now, as she's talking, though, she does realize, darn it, she missed that big performance. She realizes she's in a little bit of trouble. She's very, worried about what her dad is going to say, because unlike Ariel, King Triton, voiced by Kenneth Mars, who I know primarily from his work in the films of Mel Brooks. You may know him as the original. What's his character from The Producers? I've just forgotten the character's name from The Producers. I keep wanting to say Frau Blucher, which is not his character from Young Frankenstein, but he's in that movie.
No.
But the point is, so he's very funny in those films. But the point is, he is, as Triton, he is firm, he is angry, he is displeased that his daughter would even approach the surface, because to him, all humans, specifically all men, hashtag all men, they're all pretty terrible people. They all want to kill mermaids and mermen. He forbids his daughter from going to the surface again, which, as you can imagine, since we're talking about a 16-year-old, does not really stick for very long. And as it happens, King Triton decides he makes Sebastian follow after Ariel to make sure, keep tabs on her. It is worth pointing out, though, that before the next song, Ariel ignores her father. She goes back to the surface one evening and she sees a big seaside birthday celebration for Prince Eric. There's fireworks. He is dancing around with is it a pan flute he's playing? I think. What is that?
Sure.
I don't know. Some kind of musical instrument that he's dancing around with. And, she sees Eric. She doesn't even say a word to him, but as soon as she sees him, she's hooked, as they say. And she has fallen in love with him immediately. Again, there's some back and forth with her and her dad, and eventually Sebastian ends up serving as a bit of an audience to the next song without Ariel's knowing, because, as it turns out, as Sebastian learns for himself, Ariel doesn't just love or the idea of the human world. She has collected all sorts of trinkets and toys, things like snarfblats and dinglehoppers and other such things. And she has them in a little grotto, Ariel's grotto, which used to be a real thing at Disney California Adventure. R.I.P. I know. I think that's where Lamplight Lounge is now, right? The Pixar Pier area?
Yes.
Yes. But anyway, so my point is, she has all this stuff. Sebastian is shocked by it, and he's even more shocked by the performance Ariel gives, as much to Flounder as to herself, as to the off-screen Prince Eric, as she sings how badly she wants to be part of your world. Now, part of your world is one of the 4 songs I mentioned, which are stone cold, right out of the gate, perfect. Howard Ashman spoke to Disney animators before this film about the I Want song. Scott, you mentioned that a few minutes ago, the notion of one of the core types of songs in a solid Broadway show is the I want song, the song where the character explains their desires, the things they are hoping, the dreams they're hoping to achieve, the things they want in their life, the things they are going to hopefully get in the course of the story that they're part of. And he was able to explain it so effectively, and obviously so much of what makes the song work is his lyrics, is Alan Menken's music, but it's coupled so beautifully by the animation, by Jodie Benson's performance. And I must say, something we've talked about sometimes here on the show is how much a song stands on its own in the composition, as opposed to how much is it reliant on a specific performer. Now, Part of Your World is a great song. I think Jodie Benson makes it a perfect song. What do you think?
I think that's completely fair, and I think that it's, as you say, it's a combination of the animation of the vocal performance and the vocal performance itself and the song. You know, when we're talking about the animated musicals, that three-legged stool is what makes them. And as we go through the other great songs you mentioned, I think all of those things are in place there as well. It is so well animated. It is so thoughtfully animated in terms of when to make it silly, when to make it kind of melancholy or low key, when to make it creepy, when to make it goofy. All of those things in terms of the mood setting of the animation and the vocal performances. All of those things in the four stone cold classics, as we will call them. Those are all in place. I mean, I think that this is. What's interesting is I remember thinking about this again, having seen this, and already being familiar with Little Shop of Horrors, is that I kind of, and this was before
I know what you're going to say.
The I Want song in Little Shop of Horrors, which is Somewhere That's Green, is very similar. Even, I mean, melodically, the melody of it is there's a lot, and of course there's some other melodic similarities and something else we will get to, but maybe you don't think the same way. But yeah, so it's like even though the idea of the I Want song was not really part of my vocabulary at that moment, I thought, wow, they kind of picked up that idea of like, here's the character and what they're looking for, and it sounds a lot like Somewhere That's Green.
So, first of all, I will reference Little Shop of Horrors with another song here. It may not be the one you're thinking of, but I'm definitely going to bring it up again. I will say, if you hadn't, I was at least going to acknowledge I've heard the comment before about Somewhere That's Green being very similar. Obviously, when I was a kid, I had not seen either the show or the movie, and obviously I have since then. It's like, yeah, I can hear the similarity. I don't care. Like, I get it.
Oh, no.
And I know you're not criticizing it. I'm just saying, like, it's a perfect song. I don't care. I will tell you the one thing that blew my mind. I don't know if I mentioned it in our revisited episode. It's possible that I did. COVID melted my brain. That's always likely. We talked about Mary Poppins a couple weeks ago, as I said, and we talked about how surprising it was, at least to me, if not to you as well, about what song was chosen to be nominated for the Oscar. Now, 2 songs from this film were nominated, and one of them got the Oscar. And it blows my mind that this song was not even nominated. Part of Your World did not get nominated for an Oscar, which is insane to me. It is insane.
It does make me. I mean, I know that for most songs of throughout Oscar history, people are probably listening to them as much as they are watching them in terms of just whether. But I think that the 2 songs, which, I mean, it's not like we have to be secretive about it, We're Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl,
yes,
are both livelier songs, and I think lend themselves to being catchier in a very, I think, a much more conventional sense, that you can understand them being earwormy, whereas Part of Your World is just lovely. And it's not like these kinds of songs, it's not like love ballads or ballads of this kind haven't won plenty of Oscars over the years. Yes. But I think if you're making the choices, these things became, they just were, I mean, they were certainly early radio Disney hits. Let's just put it that way.
They were. And just, I see your point, of course. And yes, the 2 songs that Samuel E. Wright performs in are indeed incredibly lively. But also it's like, I mean, this song is perfect, and as you say, it's not as if there aren't other love ballads, especially some from Disney. I feel like, for example, "Can You Feel the Love Tonight?" Pretty sure got an Academy Award nomination, and that's a perfect example of a ballad, and one that I would also say is not remotely as good as Part of Your World. It's fine, but it's not that good. Is my argument. Anyway, the point is, so Ariel sings this song. Sebastian, at the end of it, reveals his presence, and at first, he is worn down to maybe not tell King Triton everything, but before too long, Ariel goes back to the surface. There is a big storm that wrecks the ship that was the source of that big birthday celebration. Eric is knocked overboard. Ariel rescues him and brings him to shore. She then sings a brief reprise. It feels kind of like it tacks on. It's one of those songs where there's the extra 30 to 45 seconds that appear after a few minutes of action. So it almost, in my head, feels like part of the whole song. It's, hitting the same beats.
Part of that song.
There you go. Exactly. But anyway, after she sings this, Eric gets a brief glimpse of this mystery woman. He recognizes the voice. He can kind of see a hazy vision of her, but not clear enough to know that she is, a mermaid. So she goes back under the sea, and before too long, King Triton gets a sense that something has changed in Ariel's mood. He can tell that she is, in that kind of lovey-dovey space, and Sebastian inadvertently blows up her spot. He tells Triton that she is in love with a human. Triton is furious. He destroys everything in her grotto. Ariel is heartbroken. Now, I have to make sure I'm trying to remind myself, because I watched the movie about a week ago. Have I already skipped over Under the Sea's placement? I feel like Under the Sea occurs before he blows up her spot, or am I wrong that it's afterwards? You saw it more recently, perhaps.
Well, I mean, Under the Sea is right after he, she's doing the "he loves me not, he loves me."
Yes. So it's before Triton gets angry because she wouldn't want to hang out with Sebastian afterwards. So then let's talk about Under the Sea, the Academy Award winning song. Now, I know I've said as much on Blue Sky before. Under the Sea is a very fun song. It obviously, in the same way that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs sets the templates for all of different Disney animated films, Under the Sea feels like it set the template for the comic showstopper number of the Renaissance era. Songs like "Be Our Guest," songs like "Friend Like Me," or "Hakuna Matata." And at the same time, it is such a fun, bouncy number, and it has my favorite lyric in any Disney movie. It's the kind of thing where it's one of the best lyrics in any Disney song. When the sardine,
I guess? I knew it. You didn't give me a shot. I knew that was going to be it.
Yes, it is. See, when the sardine begin to begin, it's music to me, and it's like, damn, I love that.
But that's one of the things that was so characteristic of Ashman, is that he was wonderful at not just line rhyme, but internal rhyme that led to the line rhyme. So that's just something that every time I caught one of those things, it's like, oh, that's just the thing that he did. And I mean, I wish, of course, there's nothing that's jumping to mind. I know that there are others of the classic songs. Well, even like that's what happens in The Beauty and the Beast, the title song. It's the "barely even friends, then somebody bends." That's the same kind of thing. But so yeah, that's just one of those things. I always love the songs that manage that sort of more complex, using an internal line rhyme and then the penultimate, or the line rhyme. And yeah, love it. I mean, I guess I should dive right in. This is
Please.
It's one of my favorite Disney songs of all time. I mean, if I put a list together, and I know that other outlets have done these kinds of things, what is the greatest Disney song? And there are plenty from the aforementioned Mary Poppins that would fill in that category. Beauty and the Beast obviously holds a very special place in my heart, but this is just, it's just legitimately great. Again, it's that three-legged stool level. It's a wonderful vocal performance, and the animation is just so delightful. And the fact is, every time I go on that Little Mermaid attraction at California Adventure, and it's like, I'll sit there through that. You have an entire huge chunk of that is just devoted to bringing that piece to life, and you can see how much material there was to work with, because the animation is so fun, and gives it so many little goofy, little odd characters of the fish that are in there to animate and to bring to life. It's lyrically wonderful. It's melodically wonderful. It's beautifully performed and beautifully animated, and I just love it to death.
Yeah, it would not be my number one personally, but I could also see why it would. I'm very old fashioned. It's the best Disney song is When You Wish Upon a Star. It's the company logo for a reason. That's my argument. But Under the Sea is perfect. I'm not going to deny that at all. So obviously the premise of the song is to get Ariel to stop thinking about the human world. That doesn't work. As mentioned, Triton destroys everything in her grotto, which sets Ariel off on a very dark path. She is approached by the eels Flotsam and Jetsam, who take her to their boss, the sea witch Ursula, who, again, we talk about how it's not actually in the official dialogue or script that, hey, Atlantica is the name of where they are. I believe I don't know if it's like retroactively been said that, like, yeah, Ursula's like Triton's sister or something like that, or she's a relative who's in a very bad mood, something like that. Because really what Ursula wants is to take control over the entire ocean, and she sees her step to doing that by getting Ariel to sign a deal, to make a deal with her, as the game show once was. But the idea being that Ariel will sign away her voice for 3 days' time. And to do that, she will become a human. Ursula will transform her into a human. For 3 days, she will have no voice. But if she can convince Eric that she is his one true love, if he gives her true love's kiss, the deal will be void. Ariel will get her voice back, and everything will be hunky-dory. Now, Sebastian and Flounder, who are watching this in horror, they understand that Ursula is she's a real bad dudette, as I guess you might say. She is not on the up and up, but Ariel is a very angry teenager, and don't make teenagers angry because they're going to make bad choices. And so she signs away her voice, and that is all throughout the entirety of a song called Poor Unfortunate Souls. Pat Carroll voices Ursula, as I mentioned, and this is another song where the lyrics are just really delightful. There is a really solid nasty streak going through this song. As I said in my notes, it's a nasty balance of cynicism and salesmanship in the lyrics.
Yes.
Because half of the song is Ursula trying to get Ariel to say, yeah, it makes sense for me to give you my voice for 3 days. And the other half is Ursula scorning the fact that anybody ever makes a deal with her and making fun of the miserable and depressed, pathetic, that kind of thing.
Yes.
That just such a wonderful piece of music. And here again, and actually, I do want to briefly go back to your comment about the Little Mermaid, right? Because I was thinking, I do love that there's the big Under the Sea set piece. I'm a snob. They didn't get Samuel E. Wright to do the voice of Sebastian, so it always feels a step down. And you don't even get to see Ursula. You get to see a little bit of her Poor Unfortunate Souls, but only like the build up to it. It's not even the really good meaty part of it in the show, in the theme park ride rather. But they did at least get Pat Carroll's voice, which is nice. No, she does an amazing job here. And this is another case of it's a great song, well written. She raises the bar through her vocal performance, which, as we know, you can't just assume that you can cast a famous person and they'll make it better. Anyway,
yeah.
What did you think about Poor Unfortunate Souls?
Okay, so I'm sure that we could, not even just talking about the list of the Disney songs, think about the Disney villain songs. And I know how you feel about Princess and the Frog, so I'm sure that Friends on the Other Side is high on your list.
It is.
I'm sure there are plenty of great versions of this. I love Hellfire, but I think this might be my favorite villain song, and it's all about the combination of things. And I will acknowledge that we haven't even mentioned this. I think I've probably seen this more than any other of the Disney animated features. I've probably seen it more times. You talk about knowing the intonations of a line reading, it's rude. There are bits like that are just burned into my brain because this was probably the first one that I got on used, clamshell VHS tape and just played over and over and over again. I feel that the way that this is animated elevates it to such a degree. And again, it's that weird combination of creepy and playful. Lyrically, it is a great storytelling. I mean, there's a lot of plot in this song.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to explain a lot. It has to explain the consequences of what happens if this deal goes sour, and it's basically giving us a little bit of the history of Ursula. There's just a lot that it's doing from a plot standpoint, and because, as you've already said, this is such a short film, it has to be really efficient at that. But there are bits of animation in this thing that I just, when we have the moment where she says, on the whole, I've been a saint, and sort of drapes this piece of seaweed or something over her head in this sort of beatific pose, and then does the little, rumba with it afterwards. And it's just bits like that are just, I'm just sort of awestruck by the choices made from a character animation standpoint that elevate what this is, because, as we all know, well, those who have followed this thing, this is a character based on Divine, the famous
Yes.
character from the John Waters films, and so you're sort of getting this sort of big brassy character that also has to be in some ways believably scary. And now obviously
Yes.
the animation gets scarier as we get to that later version that you mentioned, when she goes full monolith and juggernaut of the sea. But this song is so interesting, and as you say, that combination of being sort of a, seduction. It has to be, a type of a seduction, and it has to be fun and playful, but it also has to be a little scary. And I think the fact that it does all those things as well as it does is really impressive.
Yes, I would agree entirely. And it's also funny because it might not be the bit with the thing that she's got over her head, but there is a specific shot of Ursula that I believe that the animators went back to when they were doing Be Prepared. First, when in that film, there is a shot of Scar in a very, one might say, a bit of a flamboyant pose that if you look carefully, it's like, yeah, that's because that's the same pose that Ursula made in Little Mermaid. And, they're going back to the source of taking inspiration from Divine. But yeah, I mean, Poor Unfortunate Souls is a great song. I will call out one of the things that I have long since made peace with this movie, and I think it applies in some ways to a couple other Disney animated films. The plot structure is very interesting because there's not much of this movie when Ariel doesn't have a voice, because of how much time it takes to get to that point, to the point of her signing away her voice, turning into a human. It's just
I jotted that down. It's the 45-minute mark. This song appears at the 45-minute mark.
Yep.
So there's a lot, there's not a lot that's left. There's, half an hour of the movie is left after that point.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. And because of that, so in that final half hour, Ariel does not have a lot of time. She goes to she washes up on the beach. Eric finds her. Of course, he cannot confirm if she is his mystery woman because she can't sing to him. But he, of course, thinks she's an attractive young lady, and why not help her get cleaned up and spend some time with her. And in the middle of spending time with her, Sebastian follows along. Since he is a crab, he is able to be above water without endangering himself. But that would only help if he did not run afoul of Chef Louis, played by everyone's favorite security officer from Deep Space Nine, Rene Auberjonois. That's where I think of Rene Auberjonois. I know he is an actor with many, many decades of credits. I am aware of this, but I think of him as Odo from Deep Space Nine.
And as a child of the 80s, I knew him first from Benson.
I had a feeling you were going to say Benson. Speaking of Disney animation and Robert Guillaume being in The Lion King. But anyway, so he is Chef Louis, and he gets to sing the only other above ground human song, and that would be Les Poissons, which is a funny, goofy little song that, as I promised earlier, reminds me a little bit of Howard Ashman writing Dentist from Little Shop of Horrors, just in terms of let's have this flamboyantly over the top, deliciously evil and proud of it character. The whole idea is this chef singing about how much he loves killing fish and turning them into food. And, I'm not a vegetarian. I enjoy seafood, so I don't get to act too horrified by this, but it's a funny number that, sets up a little bit of back and forth between Chef Louis and Sebastian. But it's also kind of slight in between all the other great songs. What do you think?
Sure, but there are two important things I will note. First of all, I think this is important as it feels very much like the dry run for Be Our Guest. It is,
Mm,
if you les poissons, it's
yeah.
Be Our Guest. It's sorry, it just basically is that. But also it gives us one of my favorite just silly but I love it rhymes, which is rhyming les poissons with ho ho ho. The Maurice Chevalier-esque, version of the leering cad French accent, the ha ha
Yes.
ha. And I just
Yes.
like think that's there's not a lot to this. The lyrically, it's just basically him describing what he's going to do to turn a crab into a meal. Um, but so it's more fun for the actual animation of the segment, which I really enjoy still. But the song itself is, you know, it's more, again, I think it has more value as for it's like, let's just take that and make it really better.
Yes. Yeah, again, it's a fun number. I think it's certainly better than Fathoms Below or Daughters of Triton, but it's also not, four of these songs be nominated for Oscars. This one, not so much, but that's okay. So in the middle of all of this, again, we've got 3 days. Ariel has a ticking clock, and she is doing her best to make use of it. And she is, of course, being supported by Sebastian and all the other animals of the Mediterranean, the area where they all are. And this leads to the final song of the film and the final Academy Award nominated song of the film, and that would be "Kiss the Girl." It's kind of a love ballad, but also a little faster paced, perhaps, than Part of Your World. But the idea being, this is Sebastian trying his best to convince Eric as a kind of disembodied voice, not trying to show himself as a talking crab, that, you see this girl right in front of you, you think she's pretty attractive. Come on, fella, kiss her. Let's not worry about how well you know her. Just kiss the girl, plant one on her. And it's such a charming piece of music. Again, it's like Howard Ashman was pretty instrumental in arguing that Sebastian should be Jamaican, that it shouldn't be somebody perhaps a little more officious, a little more British, perhaps it should be a Jamaican character, which I think in a less accomplished composer's hands could have been real awkward. It could have held up pretty poorly. But I think that his lyrics combined with Samuel E. Wright's performance make this a really remarkable piece of music. And I do just want to call out one of my favorite shots in a Disney movie comes in this scene. If you watch the sequence, there is a bit near the final chorus where the camera is essentially swooping up out of the water and giving us, like, it's almost as if the camera is a living thing. It's one of those rare moments in an animated film, especially from Disney, where they're trying to make it feel like a real movie, quote unquote. And it's such a clever bit of animation in the middle of a really fun song that also, as I mentioned, does include a joke at Scuttle's expense as he tries to join in at the singing and is really quite careful at it. What do you think of Kiss the Girl?
One of the things I've always loved about the way that this is set up, and this is just the structure of the song, but intentionally so, is he's basically leading us through the orchestration. It almost feels like if you are familiar with one of those vintage versions of Peter and the Wolf, the Prokofiev Peter and the Wolf, where someone is explaining to you which of each of the instruments is this animal, and the oboe is this animal, and the bassoon is this, and he's sort of leading us through. It's like first we get the winds, and then you hear the orchestration, the build up of the orchestration is built into the song, and I just think that makes it so lovely. I'm listening to that orchestration throughout and sort of picking out how those instruments are working, and that's aside from how charming it is in the rest of the animation. But I think it is a song that invites you to listen carefully to it in a way that I don't think a lot of songs do in any movie. It says take a moment, pause, and then enjoy the whole thing. And it's really kind of wonderful just for that reason alone. I just keep sitting here thinking about how much I appreciated that moment where it's giving me a chance to invite me into a song, to the crafting of a song.
Yeah, it's an excellent piece of music, a really charming song. And as mentioned, outside of the little reprises at the end. It's the last real song of the movie. The last 15, 20 minutes is more action oriented as Ursula tries to basically play the woman who Eric saw, pretending to look kind of sort of like Ariel, as a woman named Vanessa. And, she basically hypnotizes him into trying to marry her. She is stopped at the last minute. There's the big action sequence where Ursula turns into this gigantic monster. Of course, good triumphs over evil happily ever after. Triton realizes that he needs to let his daughter go. It has always been very telling to me that the final line of this film is, "I love you, Daddy," because it feels like that father-daughter kind of relationship is the real core of the movie, as much as any romance between Ariel and Eric. Now, as mentioned, the film was actually a multiple Academy Award winner at the 62nd Academy Awards, as it, Under the Sea won for Best Original Song. Kiss the Girl was one of the other nominees. The other three nominees, I always like to run through these. We have from Parenthood, I Love to See You Smile by Randy Newman. Speaking of The Princess and the Frog. There is After All from Chances Are, music by Tom Snow and lyrics by Dean Pitchford. I believe he's responsible for Footloose from a few years earlier. And then I've heard of Marvin Hamlish, of course. He wrote the music. Alan and Marilyn Bergman, they wrote the lyrics. I've heard of them too. I have not heard of the film Shirley Valentine, and I have not heard of the song The Girl Who Used to Be Me. But that was the other nominee.
Really?
No idea. Never heard of this movie before. It is an English romantic comedy drama, according to Wikipedia.
Yes. Okay.
Starring,
should start starring Pauline Collins.
Pauline Collins and Tom Conti.
Yeah.
But I would not have known that otherwise.
I would never have remembered the song for sure. No.
There you go.
I remember the movie, and it's quite a delightful little movie, but it's not just one I remember for its music.
There you go. So the other Academy Award that The Little Mermaid won was for its score. So Alan Menken took that Oscar home, and he beat out some pretty heavy hitters too. The other nominees, we have two different films that John Williams was nominated for. Can you guess them off the top of your head?
Well, I can certainly tell you that from 1989 would have been Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Correct.
But that was probably also, let's see, no, it wasn't Home Alone. That would have been the next year.
Correct. The other film was Born on the 4th of July.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And then there was Dave Grusin's score for The Fabulous Baker Boys. And finally, I love Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade score, but I will say the only other one that I would have been like, yep, I can see this winning because I love baseball. And we both love the compositions of James Horner. That film would be Field of Dreams, was the other nominee that year. So the movie won a couple of Academy Awards. It did very well. It obviously kickstarted this massive era for Disney in the 1990s, and it eventually, unfortunately, led to a remake in 2023. Now, we, of course, did not talk about that film since we were not doing the old show back in 2023. Spoiler alert, it's a bad movie. I believe I've mentioned before recently that Rob Marshall, we as a society were supposed to have risen up to stop him from ever directing a movie ever again. We failed, and movies like Little Mermaid are the result. And the only reason why I want to bring that film up is that there were a couple of songs in that movie, new songs. Three new songs.
Three new songs.
Three new songs, but the one that I want to call attention to, there's really only one that I think is worth discussing because it's terrible. It is, so if you had come to me before this movie came out and said, Josh, there's going to be a Little Mermaid remake, it would have been like a version of that Simpsons joke with the Frogurt. I would have been like, that's bad. It's going to have new songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda. That's good. Also, one of the songs is going to feature Aquafina. That's bad. It's also going to feature Daveed Diggs, America's favorite fighting Frenchman. That's good. And unfortunately, the end result is a song called The Scuttlebutt. Now, I mentioned earlier, Scuttle doesn't sing in the animated film. It is a joke that he cannot sing. It is a specific joke the movie makes at his expense. And the thing I don't get is this. Now, aside from the fact that Aquafina is this close to completing the animation hat trick, by which I mean appearing in almost literally every animation studio's movies, because she's been in a lot. I don't know if you realize this, Scott. She has been in movies from Sony, from Paramount, from Disney, Raya and the Last Dragon, from DreamWorks. from Illumination, Migration. If you were thinking to yourself, but she hasn't been in a Leica movie yet, don't worry, she will be next year. That's not a joke. She's in a ton of movies.
You can understand why in the same way that there's just distinctive voices that lend themselves to being good animation voices.
Yes, but the thing is, her distinctive voice is specifically nasal and arguably obnoxious. And that's why you cast her as the character who can't sing. And yet, Lin-Manuel Miranda foisted upon us a song called The Scuttlebutt. Now, I am sometimes prone to hyperbole, and I'm about to be hyperbolic here. The Scuttlebutt is such a bad song that it made me question whether or not I should like Hamilton anymore. It's a terrible fucking song.
I mean, okay, so let's just say this. It is
Please
not a
do
song.
not defend this song.
No. You say that this is the song that it's not sung. It is one of those Lin-Manuel Miranda, rap talk lyrics type of songs. It's not really sung. So it's fine to give someone who can't sing in the same way that you give, a singer who can't sing, let's say someone who might have been in Oscar-nominated films of the 1960s. You don't ask them to actually carry a tune. So that's it. But the lyrics themselves are terrible. The lyrics themselves are very, very bad. It would be fine if you actually decided to give an interesting, amusing / otherwise worthwhile talk-sung song to someone who can't sing. That is not what this is.
Yes, I mean, okay, that I see your point, but it's a quote-unquote new song. That's what I'm going to say. It was written as a new song, so it counts like that, and it's just like the other two songs. There's a new song that Haley Bailey as Ariel sings. I just had it up on my computer. I already forgot.
For the first time.
There you go.
For
the first time, I'm remembering that I heard that song. And then there's a song that Prince Eric sings called Wild Uncharted Waters. And
I'm going to say this about Wild Uncharted Waters. I actually think it is a pretty good song that is terribly performed. I think the actual performance of that is so histrionic and so bombastic. It's basically someone trying to do the Ariel thrusting herself out of the water onto the rock moment in Part of Your World as a dude standing on the rocks, and he's doing that for every fucking line of the song. Sorry about that, but that's what's infuriating. It's like, I think it's actually quite a lovely tune, and I understand giving Prince Eric actually some sort of agency and an actual personality, fine, but it's a terrible performance. So I would like to actually see some other versions of that, and maybe there are somewhere out there in the cover version world.
Perhaps I was going to say Jonah Howard King, who plays Prince Eric. He has been in a lot of stuff this year. He was in a few episodes of Doctor Who. He was in the Legacy sequel of I Know What You Did Last Summer, and apparently he's even in House of Dynamite. And all I will say is when I look at his picture online, it's like, you look like a person. Sure. Okay. Maybe I saw this movie in theaters. And I should also note my older son, who I adore very much, has different tastes than I do, which means, unfortunately for me and my wife, he loved The Scuttlebutt. So we heard that song a lot after that movie came out. So Lin-Manuel Miranda, I know you're listening. I know you're a dedicated fan. How dare you? But so now you mentioned covers. I'm going to cede it to you because this is the kind of movie where I almost don't know how many of the covers I even want to hear because the versions that we know of are so perfect. But what have you uncovered, as we might say?
Well, one of the things that's kind of interesting, and I would recommend people who are kind of curious about this, and I think I've mentioned this before, there is a website called secondhandsongs.com that is a great place to look up cover versions. And one of the things that's interesting when you look it up is it will tell you how it ranks among songs released in that year for covers. And you will find, for instance, that Part of Your World is the 8th most covered song of 1989. I couldn't tell you how to find 7, 6, 5, 4, etc., but that is a song that is covered a lot.
Oh, sure.
And so there are lots of versions out there. I mean, one of the things in looking this up is realizing Kiss the Girl, so popular with college male a cappella bands you would not believe. There are so many recordings in the 1990s that college male a cappella bands did. It just makes me think that somewhere out there's a version that Andy Bernard of The Office did of Kiss the Girl for with Broccoli Rob and all the rest. But to get back to the other ones, there are a couple that are actually, I mean, perfectly fine. But it's the weird ones. We've already talked about the fact that Brian Wilson did a whole album of Disney covers called In the Key of Disney. And so hearing a wall of sound style production of Kiss the Girl, really, not so much. Not so much.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Colby Calais does a version on Disney Mania, which is nice. I like Colby Calais. She's got a nice voice. There is a punk rock cover by a band called Punk Rock Factory of Under the Sea.
You sent that to me. Yes, I remember that.
Which I really actually like quite a bit. And I think that's what you have to do in order to make one of these things interesting, is to I'm not going to try to mimic it in some way. It's going to be completely its own thing. And I think Under the Sea works as it's like, it just simply works as a punk song. And then the other one that it's like I had to listen to, even though I knew exactly what it was going to be, is Olivia Newton-John's version of Part of Your World. And I think, but I think one of the things that's instructive about listening to these things is realizing why the versions work that we love. And this is so heavily orchestrated. It is so produced that the emotion of the performance is lost. And I think that what we love about Jodie Benson's performance of that song is that there is this yearning in it for something. And if you have this big production and a lot of orchestration to it, you're not going to get that. So for people who are curious, secondhandsongs.com is a fun place to find some of these things. And check it out.
All I can say right now is, thinking of Olivia Newton-John, let's get mythical.
Oh, God.
That was the appropriate reaction. But also, kids, if you don't know that reference, Google Let's Get Physical. You'll get my joke. Anyway, you won't like it, but you'll get it. I don't know that I have anything else on The Little Mermaid aside from, again, this is like we have already talked about another Renaissance era film in Aladdin, the aforementioned 92 movie. I mean, this is still not, Beauty and the Beast is my favorite of the Renaissance era films, but this comes very, very close. And it says something that Howard Ashman only contributed to so many Disney films, including, I should note, Oliver and Company, because he did write a song for that movie. And if you're wondering, how have I never heard of that song before? Look it up and listen, and then you will know the answer. It's not great, but that's okay. My point is, he contributed to only so many films, but he made such an indelible mark across these songs. And again, Alan Menken, also an amazing composer. I don't want to pretend like he is not a huge part of why this film is successful, and it's more than just the songs, but this is the kind of movie where I feel like if the songs don't work, we're probably not talking about this movie, or we might not even be talking about these movies at all, because who knows what Disney animation would have looked like.
But I think we also can't underestimate the fact that Howard Ashman was a key component as a producer of these songs. That he was he was able to shape what the musical storytelling was because he understood that world. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the part that I think can't be underestimated, is the template that he set, that even in the movies that he did not personally work on or was unable to complete in his lifetime, that he basically created the template that made the Disney musical of the 90s what they were. And that's, I think, beyond any individual song, he said, this is what the musical should be like, how it should be structured, how it should work. And it's just, he nailed it.
Yes. Now, before we go, there is one thing I should have mentioned before. I would feel very bad if I did not. We have talked about Jodie Benson. We have talked about Howard Ashman. Are you aware that their paths had crossed before The Little Mermaid?
No.
So Howard Ashman wrote the book and lyrics to a musical version of Smile. Smile was a 1975 comedy directed by Michael Ritchie about beauty pageant contestants. And there was a version on Broadway in 1986. Jodie Benson played a character named Doria, and a song that he wrote, that she performed. Do you know what it's called? It's called Disneyland.
How lovely.
It was written in the stars, and it's a song, I bet you've heard it before, because it's one of those that I think taking out of context, it doesn't sound maybe like the movie. As I understand it, the show is a little, it's a bit like Drop Dead Gorgeous, maybe like an earlier version of Drop Dead Gorgeous, if folks out there are familiar with that 1999 comedy. But this song is a little, you can take it out of context and it's not maybe as acidic, shall we say. So it's one of those that if listeners out there have not heard Jodie Benson sing Disneyland, you should. It's a lovely song in some way. And when you hear it, it's like, yeah, I can see why Howard Ashman would want to have her voice Ariel. You can tell pretty much immediately. But anyway, I think that's it, unless you had anything else you wanted to bring up.
I am ready to roll.
All right. Well, then take us out.
So with that, it's time to turn down the volume on Mousterpiece Melodies. What's on the playlist for our next episode? From 1992, The Muppet Christmas Carol, which, Josh, I think you may have some affinity for. I'm just throwing it out there. You may have some affinity for this film. And while you wait, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts.
You know, I think it's funny. You expect that I have that affinity because of the GIF that I love so very much, which of course I do. I have a hot take about that movie, and it is going to apply to the songs, and I think that it will. I don't know how hot of a take it is, but it's a relatively hot take about that movie. All I will say right now is it's not my favorite of the 90s Disney Muppet movies. But we'll talk about that soon. We would love for all of you out there to listen along. Tell us what you think. Do you love the songs of The Little Mermaid? I'm going to take a guess and say most of you do. Is it possible that you hate these songs? Really? Really? I don't think so, but maybe you do. If you have any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share, you can always reach me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com. Follow me on Blue Sky @Mousterpiece, and make sure you are subscribing to Episodic Medium, the TV newsletter on Ghost, the site where I contribute every week. I am in the middle of covering Elsbeth and Matlock. It has been a very enjoyable season of Elspeth. It has been a slightly less enjoyable season of Matlock, but we're getting there. And listen, Melanie Linsky showed up on an episode of Matlock. She has not yet reunited with her real-life husband, Jason Ritter, but there's always time. Anyway, Scott, where can our listeners find you online?
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw. You can find me on Letterboxd at Scott Renshaw, where I will occasionally be doing some longer form writing in addition to my regular capsule reviews. That's some of the things I've been doing recently, including some special commissions for people who have made donations to food pantries. I've had people who wanted to make a donation give me a movie to watch, and I've had some interesting selections. So you can find those things on Letterboxd at Scott Renshaw. You can also find my regular reviews at cityweekly.net, where for the Thanksgiving week, that will include Zootopia 2, in addition to the new Knives Out film. And I'm Scott Renshaw.
First of all, I should have shared my own food bank donation. I donate to a local food bank here. I should have figured out what terrible film I could have made your review.
Please do. It's not too late.
I'm going to make you watch the Star Wars Holiday Special then. Something like that.
If I can find it, I don't know.
I think you can find it on YouTube. It's pretty easy to find.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm Josh Spiegel, and we'll see you all next time on Mousterpiece Melodies.